Imagine a world so far away from our sun that it takes more than 5 full hours for sunlight to even reach it. A place where the temperature drops to -230 degrees Celsius. That's so cold, if you took a glass of water there, it would turn into a rock harder than ice in a single second. And the craziest part? One single year on this world lasts 248 Earth years. That means if you were born there, you wouldn't have even hit your first birthday yet. This is Pluto. It used to be the 9th planet in our solar system, but today it's been kicked off the list. Today, we're going to dive into its whole story, what Pluto actually is, why it's so special, and if life could actually exist there. So let's start with the basics. If you've ever looked up at the stars at night, you know just how massive our solar system is. There are 8 planets orbiting our sun. First, there's Mercury, then Venus, then our own Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and finally, Neptune. But once upon a time, there was another name on that list, Pluto. It was the 9th and furthest planet in our solar system. However, in 2006, scientists removed Pluto from the list and reclassified it as a dwarf planet. Now, you're probably wondering, what happened that made them suddenly demote an entire planet? Let's look at the history. The year was 1930. There was a 23-year-old American astronomer named Clyde Tombaugh. He worked at the Lowell Observatory in Arizona, and his job was to take photos of the night sky and hunt for anything new. Now, how do you find something new in the endless sky? Back then, they would take photos of the sky on 2 different days and then use a machine to flip back and forth between them. If something seemed to change its position, it meant it wasn't a star. It was something moving, like a planet or an asteroid. Stars are so far away, they look like they're standing still, but planets are close enough that we can see them move. On February 18, 1930, Clyde saw something that shook the whole world. He spotted a tiny speck of light that was moving, and it was way past Neptune. He immediately told his seniors, they verified his research, and on March 13, 1930, the world was told, "We found a new planet." Now came the part of naming it. The name was actually suggested by an 11-year-old girl named Venetia Burney, who lived in England. Her grandfather told her a new planet had been discovered and needed a name. The girl suggested Pluto, which was the name of the god of the underworld in Greek and Roman mythology. Since this planet was so far away and dark that sunlight barely reached it, the name Pluto was absolutely perfect. That's how Pluto got its name, and for 76 years it remained our 9th planet. But here's the interesting part. In 2006, the International Astronomical Union, or IAU, called a meeting in Prague. Thousands of scientists from around the world gathered there and made a massive decision. Pluto would no longer be considered a planet. Why?
Well, to understand that, you first need to know what qualifies as a planet. The IAU set 3 conditions. First, it must orbit the sun. Second, it must have enough mass or weight that its own gravity pulls it into a round shape. And third, it must have cleared its neighborhood around its orbit. This means there shouldn't be any other big objects floating around its path. Pluto passes the first 2 conditions easily. It orbits the sun and it's round, but it fails the third one. The area where Pluto orbits is called the Kuiper Belt, and there are thousands of other objects just like Pluto floating there. Pluto hasn't cleared its path, and that's why it was labeled a dwarf planet. This decision was super controversial. A lot of people felt it was wrong and that Pluto deserved its planet status back. Even today, many scientists disagree with the rule and want it changed. Let's look at some other fascinating things that make Pluto a unique place. First off, Pluto is tiny. If you compare it to Earth, it's actually smaller than our moon. Yeah, you heard that right. The moon orbiting Earth is bigger than Pluto. Pluto's diameter is only 2,374 kilometers, while our moon's diameter is 3,475 kilometers. If you lined up 6 Plutos, they still wouldn't be as big as Earth. It's so small that if there were roads, you could drive all the way around it in a single day. Second, Pluto has a heart. No, really. In 2015, when NASA's New Horizons spacecraft flew past Pluto and sent back high-resolution photos, the world was stunned. There was a massive heart-shaped area on Pluto's surface. It's now officially called Tombaugh Regio, named after the man who discovered Pluto. This area is made of nitrogen ice, and it's so big that 2 entire states like Texas could fit inside it. Third, Pluto's orbit is weird. Most planets orbit the Sun in a relatively straight, flat line, but Pluto's orbit is tilted. It's so tilted and lopsided that sometimes it actually gets closer to the Sun than Neptune does. For a few years, Pluto becomes the 8th closest object to the Sun, and Neptune becomes the 9th. This last happened between 1969 and 1999. Fourth, Pluto has 5 moons. The biggest is Charon, which is so large that some scientists call Pluto and Charon a double planet system. That's because Charon is almost half the size of Pluto itself. The other 4 tiny moons are Nix, Hydra, Kerberos, and Styx. These are very small and were discovered after 2005. Fifth, Pluto has ice mountains. But this isn't water ice, it's frozen nitrogen, methane, and carbon monoxide. New Horizons found mountains over 3 kilometers high. These mountains are made of water ice that gets as hard as rock in those extreme temperatures. Between these mountains, there are flowing glaciers made of nitrogen ice. It's a completely different world from ours. Sixth, Pluto has an atmosphere.
Despite its tiny size, it has a thin atmosphere, mostly made of nitrogen, with a bit of methane and carbon monoxide. But the cool part is that this atmosphere isn't permanent. When Pluto gets closer to the Sun, the ice on the surface warms up, turns into gas, and creates an atmosphere. When Pluto moves away from the Sun, that gas freezes back into ice and falls to the surface. It's almost like Pluto is breathing. Seventh, Pluto is actually red and brown. Many people think it would be white or gray because of the ice, but it's actually a reddish-brown color. This is because of tholins, which are organic compounds. When ultraviolet light from the Sun hits the methane in Pluto's atmosphere, it creates tholins that fall to the surface, giving Pluto its color. Now, for the most important question, could there be life on Pluto? Well, it's complicated. If we're talking about life like humans, animals, or plants, absolutely not. It's way too cold, there's no liquid water on the surface, and the atmosphere is too thin to breathe. But there's a catch. Some research suggests there might be a subsurface ocean deep underground. It sounds crazy to have an ocean in such a cold place, but there's science behind it. Pluto's core is rocky and might contain radioactive elements. As these elements decay, they create heat. That heat could melt the ice from below, creating an ocean. If there's water, there could be, theoretically, microbial life. We have places on Earth, like the bottom of the ocean, where volcanoes release hot water, where life survives without sunlight. They live off chemical energy. If Pluto has similar conditions, life could be there too. But right now, it's just a theory. The New Horizons mission is one of the most exciting space missions in history. It launched in January 2006 and took 9.5 years to reach Pluto. When it launched, Pluto was still a planet. By the time it got there, it was a dwarf planet. The spacecraft was launched at the fastest speed ever, about 58,000 kilometers per hour. That's faster than a bullet, and it still took nearly a decade to get there. That tells you how far away Pluto really is. In July 2015, it finally made its closest approach, flying just 12,500 kilometers away and collecting thousands of photos. Those images showed us a world more beautiful and complex than anyone imagined. One of the most surprising findings was that Pluto is geologically active. It's not a dead world. That heart-shaped area, Sputnik Planitia, is constantly moving, like a very slow glacier. There might even be cryovolcanoes that erupt ice and water instead of lava. Pluto is special because it shows us how diverse our solar system is. It reminds us that science is always changing. What was true yesterday might change tomorrow. It also shows that age doesn't matter. A 23-year-old found it and an 11-year-old named it. All it takes is curiosity and dedication. Will we ever go there? With today's tech, it's nearly impossible for humans. But who knows? In 50 or 100 years, we might have the technology to see that heart-shaped region with our own eyes. Pluto is a tiny world with its own heart, looking at its moons and hiding a secret ocean deep beneath its surface. It reminds us that there is still so much left to discover in the universe, and that's the most beautiful thing about science.